I have a problem. When I see a bow, I have to buy a bow. And I bought a new bow. I'm either really addicted to spending money, which that's a therapy issue, or I'm really addicted to working on archery stuff. But either way, I've got a bow that I have to set up. The only issue is I'm not alone. And it's not my bow. This guy is making me work. Guys, this is Chris from Carry On Traditions. We met through work a little while back and found out that we were both YouTubers and we both love to hunt. So with that being said, he bought a new bow. He knows I like to set him up, so he's putting me to work for free, which is kind of rude in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. So we've got Chris's new bow that we will be setting up today. So on his channel, he bought all of the stuff for it. It all just came in. He goes through what he bought and why he bought it. So make sure you guys go check out his channel if you want to know all of the knickknacks and stuff. I'm going to do a really in-depth video on how to set this bow up, how to build it, how to do all that stuff. So if you kind of want the nitty-gritty details of what he bought, why he decided to buy it, go check out his channel. That'll be linked down in the description. And he's already breaking stuff. Can't nice things, Chris.
I want a refund.
So this is going to be a little bit longer of a video, but we are going to jump right into building Chris's new RX7.
Also, follow my channel if you want to see me kill something with it, because it'll probably be all one video of what I put together, of unboxing everything in a sense, and then also it'll kind of like entail into my first day of hunting for a buck. We're like almost halfway through November. We only got like maybe 20 more days left of the extended archery season. So I'm gonna go out and kind of see what I can do with this brand new bow that Zach's gonna help me set up.
So kind of like I did with the Total Archery Challenge, I bought a bow, set it up, and in 3 days and shot all 4 days of Total Archery Challenge. We are going to set up his bow, and he's going to go try and kill it within the last 2 weeks that we have of this hunt.
I'm gonna have a lot more time than that.
Well, we only got like 2 weeks left, don't we?
Let me calendar check it real quick. We have, it's 11 days, and it ends on the 30th. That means I have, what, 19 days.
So a little over 2 weeks to
19 days left.
Set up a bow, get it sighted in, and try to take down a deer with it. So let's see if Chris can complete that challenge.
Let's see if Zach tunes it right to where I can complete that challenge. It all starts here, guys. Just like automotive painting, your paint is only going to come out as good as your prep. So blame this guy if I miss something.
I'm not going to set it up good.
I don't miss.
Alright, so when you get a bow straight out of the box, it does not come preset to you. So the first thing that you'll have to do is get your draw length set. There's a couple of different ways to measure your draw length. Wingspan divided by 2.5. That usually gets you pretty close. Chris and I have already talked. He is a 29.5-inch draw. On most, if not all, bows, right here is a list of mod position.
Twist it this way so it gets the light. Yeah.
It's a list of mod position and what the draw length it corresponds to. So with Chris being a 29.5, we are going to move his mods to B. So there are some bows out there where you do have to put the bow in the press in order to change mod position. One thing that's really sweet about Hoyt's is you don't need that. There is no pressure on the mods whatsoever from the strings, so it's just a couple of set screws. You do not have to twist them all the way out, just enough for this screw to ride this track. Out good, and right in here you can see that little C right there, and that's what we're looking to change. So like I said, Chris is gonna go to B. It is now at B, and we just tighten these guys down. We do that to both top and bottom. These little holes, can you see those? These little holes right here, there's a pin that is inside the mod that will sit into these holes. That's how you are able to tell that you are in the correct position, is that there's a little pin right inside there. Once we move it, it should sit right in that hole. Just like that. For changing draw lengths on the Hoyts, any version, newer version from like 3 or 4 years ago up until now, it's that simple. Just a quick little twist of the mod and you have the correct position. You can fine tune it a little bit if you really want to by adding and take away twists, but we won't worry about that until later once we get the bow fully set up. So next thing that we're going to do is we are going to test the weight. Chris likes it at 70 pounds, maybe a little bit more if he can get it. And then we're also going to check the timing of the cams. Really easy to adjust those if we have to. Hoyt is really good at having the bow come pretty dang, if not perfect, on the timing straight out of the box. So we'll throw her on the draw board here. And for this guy right here, it's just some D-loop material with a fisherman's knot on it just to make a little hook that just gets us kind of started and just kind of gets us at a starting point before we tie in a D-loop. Alright, what we're looking for here when we're checking for the timing is these mods, these feet right here on that little rubber piece, they need to contact the string right here on both the top and the bottom at exactly the same time. So Chris, you're going to have to help me out here because I can't really see. I think we're a little slow on the top.
But like,
Maybe a touch.
that's like maybe a quarter twist.
Okay. If it's that close, we're not going to really worry about it because it'll probably, once you start shooting, the strings will start to stretch and that will make it either settle in or get a little bit worse, and we can make that adjustment once the strings are stretched out. For now, I am very happy with that. You are 69.90 on the weight. 69, you're actually 69.69.
Ooh, I like that number.
All right, we'll keep it there.
That sounds like a rut bow, dude.
A rut bow.
A rut row.
Chris decided for his rest to go with this AAE driven rest. I kind of recommended him to have a limb driven rest. The string drivens are good and a lot of people like them. I don't like the fact of those. If the string starts to stretch, then this cable right here will kind of get a little bit loose, and that the well tail on those string driven will start to relax up. And it's just a lot more maintenance. There's nothing wrong with them. They're great rests. However, your limb is a little bit more solid, more repeatable. So once you get it set, it's basically just going to be set. So he went with this limb driven, the AAE driven rest. All right, so first and foremost, we're going to get this rest put on so that we can get a beginner or a beginning spot of where we want it to sit on our arrows, which will definitely help when it comes to doing paper tunes. So just simple, get this screwed in. And I'll usually get it snugged down just a little bit there, and then I will take it out of the press or the vise, whatever you got it set to. And what we're going to look for is right here. We want this to be on the same plane.
Bring it down a little bit so it's in the right.
So right here, we want this edge of the rest to be on the same plane as the mount right there. We want it to sit as level as possible. If you have a vise, it's a lot easier because you can level out the bow and then try to level the rest. But just eyeballing it, you can usually get it pretty close. I feel like that's pretty solid there. And once you get to that point, you can snug her down. Do a little double check and make sure that it stayed level. Sometimes when you go to twist that, the front will kind of dip down a little bit. But for now, that right there is where we're going to leave it. Alright, once you get your rest on the bow, next thing is going to be to get the arrows set on the string where they need to be to shoot as straight as possible. Essentially what we want to do, I don't know where you want me to go to show this, just like right here.
Yeah, up against that wall. It's better. So it gives it the...
So with the rest at the up position where the arrow will fire, we want to put the arrow on the bow, or the arrow on the string, and right here, we want this to be a 90-degree from the string to the arrow. That way when it's coming off as straight as possible. Now, depending on the rest that you choose, you either need to be very, very, very precise with this, or not so much. With the one that Chris chose, it does have up and down adjustment right there. So if you're off just a little bit, you'll be able to fix that once you start to paper tune. But once you get a good spot, what I'll usually do, if the arrow will hold the string well enough, I'll just leave it in there like that. If not, you take a silver Sharpie and mark the string, and that's kind of a good starting point of where we're going to put the knock sets.
Yes.
Alright, so now we're going to tie in knock sets. For this, you just need basic serving material. I like to go with a thinner serving, the 19 thousandths, I think is what it is. I don't know where I put it right there. 18 thousandths. Just a little bit more uniform, looks a little bit better. But essentially what we're going to do is right here on the knock, we are going to tie kind of a noose from the bottom down, and then we'll do another one from the top up. This will get the arrow to sit in the same spot every single time on the bow. And essentially what we're going to do that is what we call over-under knots. Something as simple as just like you're tying your shoe. You got the first knot, it's just across and under, just a basic square knot. We'll go over the string right there, and I always start on the bottom and I butt right up to the arrow knock. So we'll go one square knot over. We want the serving, start on the bottom, have the serving touch the top of the, or have the serving touch the knock of the arrow. That gets it to sit right there every single time. So essentially we'll go one square knot over like that, and then we will do a square knot under. So that's why it's called an over-under knot. You're doing one over the string, one under the string, over, under, over, under. And we will do this a total of 3 times on each side. So that's 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, 3 on the top, and 3 on the bottom. All right, and how we're gonna finish this, I don't know if we can see this very well, but right here on this knot, coming close, there's a little, I need to smell on that. There is a little gap in between that second and that third knot right there. So after you've done your 3 overs and your 3 unders, how we're gonna finish this is we're gonna come back over the top, another square knot just like that, but we are going to seat it in between that second and third knot where that gap is. Just like that. And then to finish it completely, we are going to do another square knot over the top, right on top of that, and lock it in. That's never going to come loose. You might have to redo that every once in a while depending on serving separation, stuff like that, but I've never had a knot come loose from having it tied in like that. Then last thing to do, leave yourself about an 1/8, maybe a little bit more, but cut your ends on both sides. Move the arrow out of the way. Kind of fuzzies up just, I like to fuzz them up just a little bit just to make sure that the knot holds. And then we become pyros and play with fire. Your flame always goes up. No matter how you hold it, your flame will always go up. So make sure there's nothing above it, like another string or something that you might burn through and hurt yourself. So roll the string, and flame goes up. Burn that in, tap it with your finger, that way that knot holds. And we'll roll it this way, flame goes up. Good ball, tap it with the finger and that locks it in. There's your bottom knock set. And we will now do the same thing on the very top. Okay, so now we will go to the top of the arrow. There's only one difference between the top and the bottom, and that is when you go to set your top, your first knot, you don't want to butt all the way up against the arrow like this. You don't want it to be tight. If it's tight, when Chris draws the bow back at full draw, the string will pinch down on the arrow and it will cause accuracy issues. So what I do is I go up against the knot just a little bit until I get that knot down, and then I will come up just a touch off that knock. Not a whole lot, but just enough. About like that. And then I will seat it down and I will take the arrow and I'll give it a little wiggle. You don't want a whole lot of wiggle, but a little bit goes a long way on this. So that arrow is wiggling just a little bit. That is going to avoid what's called the knock pinch at full draw. So now that we have that, I will lock it in and I will get the arrow out of my way. And then same thing, 3 over, 3 under, cinch it down, and you're good to go. Just like that, you've got knock sets. All right, we are now going to throw a D-loop on to the bow right here. The only thing with putting on a D-loop, depending on if you're shooting handheld or a wrist strap, this will be either really important or not so much. Chris shoots a wrist strap, so it's not going to make that much of a difference, but for you handheld shooters out there, this will matter as far as twist on the D-loop, which can cause weird knock travel. So with that, when we go to put the bow in the press, you want the shelf side of the bow facing you. And I'll explain why in just a minute. So we'll put this in here. All right, so we know how much Chris loves red, so we're going to put some red serving, or red D-loop on his bow. Just kidding. I want Chris to continue to show me his hunting spots and continue to film for me on my videos, so we won't be that rude this time. Okay, so D-loop material, all the stuff that I use, you can find on Lancaster Archery Supply, Shills, Cabela's, basically anywhere where you can buy archery stuff, you can find D-loop material, serving, these wrenches, anything you see me use, I got off of Lancaster Archery Supply, but like I said, you can find it basically anywhere. Okay, so we got the D-loop material. You always, like I said, put the bow into the press with the shelf side of the bow facing you. Then you want to start your D-loop on the top of your knock sets. So you make a little J with the D-loop material. Put the hook of it in front, right up against the string like that, and then you'll put both tag ends under and through the loop. So then you put one tag in through and the other tag in through. And the side that is right next to your knock sets, you want that to be the longer tag end. So here's my long one, here's my short one. Okay. You can pull that decently tight right there. Okay? And then you'll go over the string this way. Remember, we started on this on the front side for you, back side for the camera. Front side, got the tag ends in, then you will go over the string this way. So now we are camera side, but back side for me. Hold it about how long you want that D-loop to be, about like that. Okay, over, and you'll come back through the hole. Over and around, back under the string, up, and we'll create this little hole right here that we will send that string through right there. And there's your D-loop. Just like that. Then you'll burn these edges, or cut this to about, another 1/8 or a little more. Fuzz it up, burn it down, and that will lock in that D-loop. I still grab these tag ends a little bit and give them a little tug just to try to tighten this down. And if you want to get a quick tied up close up of this right here. On both sides of this D-loop right here, you want to make sure that there isn't a very big gap like that. You want to try to suck that in together as tight as possible, and that will keep it from stretching when you go to shoot for the first time. So you want to make sure you do it on this side and on the back side here. As tight as you can. And if you don't feel confident in getting it super tight, make your D-loop a little bit smaller, because then when you go to pull it back for the first time, that'll all stretch and it'll come into whatever draw length that you want it to be set to. But I feel pretty good about where we're at here. So We are going to cut these ends off. Fuzz it up. Get a good fuzz on there. Flame goes up. Get a good burn and a good solid hold point. And there you have a D-loop. Get some D-loop pliers like this, where this will go onto the D-loop right there, and that will go down to the string. Set it in between just like this, and you can give it a little bit of a cinch. You don't want to go too Western with this right now, just because of peep rotation. Once we get that peep tight in, we might have to manipulate this D-loop a little bit in order to get that peep to sit how we want it. So we'll give it just a little tug to make sure that it's going to hold, and it kind of cinches everything down a little bit. That D-loop grew just a touch, but I made it a little bit smaller for that reason. But at that point, we've got a really good D-loop tied in. So now we've got a really good D-loop set on here. We have it cinched down pretty decently. We don't want to go too Western with it just because of peep rotation. When we do go put the peep sight in, we might have to manipulate this D-loop just a little bit to get that peep to sit where we want it full draw. So you don't want to go super tight with the D-loop pliers, just enough to make sure that it's not going to slip or pull through. That D-loop did grow just a little bit, but that's perfectly fine because I set it a little bit small to begin with. So as it starts to cinch down, it's going to grow a little bit, and that'll make Chris settle into his draw a lot better. So we are at a really good kind of a stopping point for where Chris is, for what Chris has so far. So we have his arrows, but as you can see, they're not set up. There's no fletchings, there's nothing like that on there. I will build these over the next day, probably, and then we will finish everything up. There is one more thing that I want to show before we kind of call it a night for now, and it's kind of what I call a archer's bore sight. So any of you gun shooters out there, when you're putting a new sight onto a gun, you kind of want to get it bore sighted to kind of get a rough idea of where things are going to hit. This is kind of the same idea, except we are doing this for paper tune. So this is kind of like a bore tune, I guess you could call it. So when we set the arrow, originally we got this right here at a perfect 90. It might not be 100% perfect, but that's something that we can fix when we do a paper tune. That is part number one of the bore tune. That's going to help when we do go to paper tune your up and down tears. If you can get that as 90 degree as possible, that's just going to make your life a lot easier when it goes to paper tune. Now, the other trick, Chris, I'll have you come over here and kind of go over the top of me here if you can. So I will put the bow down on my foot or on the ground, just like this, with an arrow in and the rest in the up position as if it was about to be shot. Then what I'll do is I'll look straight down the cam right here and make sure that your top and your bottom cam line up as close as possible. Okay? Once you have it somewhat lined up, it doesn't have to be perfect, but close enough, then pan up a little bit. You can look up and over your pockets of the bow and see where that arrow is pointing. So point up just a little bit more. So right there, we can see that the arrow is pointing out to the right. That is immediately going to give you a knock left tear when you go paper tune. So with that, that tells me that the front of that arrow needs to come in just a little bit. So that's where we will do the bore tune. And we will take this rest and move it out just a touch to kind of get that lined up a little bit better. Then when we go to paper tune, everything will be a lot closer. It won't be perfect, but it will be a lot closer, and it just makes your life a lot easier. So you're not chasing your tail around when you go to paper tune. That is a lot straighter there. Going straight out over your limb bolt just like this, as close as possible. Right there is where the cams line up to my eye, and right there is where the arrow is running to my eye as well. So obviously if the camera's manipulated a little bit, it's going to look off that way or this way. But if you get it to look straight down the cams just like this, that arrow runs a little bit more center. So kind of just eyeballing it, kind of just eyeballing it like that will kind of get you closer on your paper tune to start with. So now that we've got it in that spot, we will lock this down. Oh, I messed that up. I slipped that. I'm going to try that again. Right there. Come over here. On sites like this, where you have reference points, kind of remember where it's at. Because on this site in particular, this moves really easily. So if you remember where your reference point was, which I don't, but I think it was that, then it'll help you keep track of where you're at. Check this one more time, lock her down, and that will be a decent stopping point for the night. "90°. I'm still just a touch out to the right, but not as bad as it was, and it's very, very close. So that might be fixed just by whether or not this bow likes that arrow or not. But as of right now, this bow is almost ready to shoot. There's only a couple things left that we have to do. We have to get Chris's peep sight set and tied in. We will have to cut these arrows and build them, and then paper tune it, and then Chris can pretty much go out and sight in from there. Excited?
Yeah, I think, dude, the thing looks sweet already. I mean, we haven't really put any of the goodies on it just yet, but it's looking pretty sweet. Just knowing that it's gonna be set up like good. You ain't getting no setup anywhere close to this from, I hate to say it, Sportsman's or whatever. I love Sportsman's, but I don't think you're getting this good of a setup out of it.
One thing that I said that I would explain that I haven't yet is why we tie that D-loop how we do. So real quick, if you look straight down the D-loop just like that, you can see that it's got a little bit of a natural curve to it, and that helps out a little bit right there. With a wrist strap release, which I have in here somewhere.
Mine's right there.
I don't know if you didn't show my ass right there.
I did.
With a wrist strap, it's not going to matter as much because it pulls pretty straight back just like that, right? However, if you are shooting a handheld release, something like this, or basically any handheld, when you go to hook this on and you go to anchor, your hand will rotate just like this. which in turn will rotate this D-loop. If you are going the opposite way, for example, you will be fighting against it. I don't know how well you can see that, but that D-loop is twisting and it just does not look natural. It's basically fighting against itself. But if you have it twisted the right way, this is how you would anchor, just right here. Whoops. Good thing with cutting arrow. I forgot this is a tension release. Let's try that again. So right there, draw that back. See, and then when you go to anchor like that, you're twisting your hand and it's not fighting against itself. And that'll make it so that when you go to shoot, your knock travel won't be so awkward coming off the string. When you go to use a release, know which release is in your hand. This is a tension, and I haven't shot a tension in a while, because otherwise you'll make a... Oops. Good thing we're cutting Chris's arrows, because...
Thanks, Zach.
I had a little accident.
This guy taught me everything I know.
And never claimed to be a professional. Just claimed to teach you everything I know. But yeah, so that's where we're going to stop for now. We'll get these arrows. I will finish building this bow up tomorrow. Chris can come and pick it up, sight it on Sunday, maybe go kill something with it on Monday, Tuesday. That'll all be on his channel. So don't forget to go check out his channel. Again, that is in the description below to find out how his season has been going. He has been having a really good season. So far, he's already filled one of his 2 tags. That will also be on his channel here in the near future.
I shot a bull.
I have a Friendsgiving to go to tomorrow, so I won't be here. So Zach's gonna be a nice guy and finish setting this up for me. And he's also gonna record some footage for me to use as a time lapse for my video. So.
Alright, we're finally back. So we're going to be finishing up Chris's bow here, starting with tying in this rest. At the end from today, this bow will be completely set up and ready to go. I still have to build his arrows, so starting tomorrow is when Chris will be able to shoot and start getting sighted in for his hunt, and he's got all week to hunt. So he still has the possibility of killing a deer after getting a brand new bow set up. So basically where we left off, I need to tie in this rest right here. If I hadn't said before, it is a limb driven rest. So essentially what's going to happen is this D-loop material is going to come down here and tie off to the limb right here, so that when the limb flexes, the rest will sit up, and then when it releases, it'll snap back down and, you know, drop the rest out of the way. So one thing that's pretty sweet about these is it comes with, if we can see that, it comes with this guy, which this is just a clamp that will go over the limb just like this, and then that D-loop material will run right through that hole right there, and that's how it's going to function. So, I mean, nothing really crazy or hard about this. We just put it right onto the limb right there, and we'll put this side on, if I don't drop it, about like that, and then screw it in, and then tie in that D-loop material, and then it should be ready to go. And then this is probably where I will just have you like send me. So we just put this guy on right here. That's supposed to clamp the D-loop material for the rest. I'm not a fan of that. That does not look good. And Chris agrees. He does not want that to hang off the bow. like that. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong with it, but maybe I am. And if you guys know, you can let me know in the comments if I did something wrong with this, but I don't like that, the way that that works. So I'm going to do something different here. A little trick. My best friend for this kind of stuff, some double-sided sticky tape, and I'll show you why. So what we are going to do here is, I'm going to cut off a small piece of sticky tape. Just like that. And then you can put that sticky tape here on the limb where it's not going to overhang as much or look as terrible. Obviously I've got some overhang there, but we can cut it. And then what we're going to do is make sure that stays on there. Doing this more or less is just to help make it so that this isn't going to slide up and down the limb. And you'll see why here in just a second, because essentially what I'm going to do now instead is I'm going to wrap this around the limb like that and then tie it off here is what my plan is now. So what we do is after we put that double-sided sticky tape on right there, get it set to where you want it. You want it to be a little bit above about halfway of the limb, because from about here up is where most of the flex happens. And you want to get it to where more flex is so that the rest comes up all the way and not just partially. Because otherwise it's going to mess with everything else that we did before about how we set that knock height, and we'll have to mess a lot more with paper tuning and stuff like that. So we want that rest to come up as much as possible. So now that we've got that on there, we have a good spot of where it's going to be. What we are going to do is just cut a small little line in this double-sided sticky tape. Not all the way through it, but more or less just a groove that this can now sit in and hang on to. And it doesn't have to be double-sided. Any type of like thick spongy tape like this will work just fine. Just something where you can create a track for this rope to go through. So now that we've got this tied and cinched down, essentially what we did is kind of just like a D-loop knot, kind of the same idea. We're going to cut this end off and then burn it so it doesn't pull through. We've got all this slack right here, and on this rest, what we can do is there's a set screw right underneath right here that is holding the D-loop material on the rest. There we go. Just like that. So we got that to pull through. Now we can drop this rest, give it some tension there, and then tighten down that set screw. As you can see now, that rest is in the down position. Now that rest is down completely. A little bit of excess right here, which we can cut and burn off just to make it a little bit more solid, and then we'll cut and burn that off. And then this rest is fully installed exactly how it needs to be. So when you get to full draw, these limbs will flex, that rest will come up, and then when it shoots, those limbs slap to the same spot every time, so that rest will get out of the way every single time, and there's a lot less maintenance to go with it. If for any reason this string ever breaks, sears, whatever, if something goes wrong with this string right here, it's just D-loop material, so you can replace it. If Chris ever wants to get some bright green or orange or any color instead of black, it's really simple just to swap out. So it also allows for a little bit more customization, if you will. All right, so now it's time to get Chris's peep sight set. So best way to do that I've ever used or learn is we're gonna have him go to full draw, get to his anchor point, and then I'm gonna put a Sharpie on his string, and then just he'll tell me move it up or down to where it lines up with his eye. And then once it does, I'll make that mark, and that's where the peep sight will go in. Once we put it there, I'll have him draw it back again just to double check. All right, going to full draw. I'm actually gonna come around the other side here. And then,
So how am I judging this?
so just, you'll see when it hits a spot that you know that's where your peep sight should be.
Right about there. In between there and where it's the knock set's already at.
Okay. So that's where we'll mark it. Now you can let down. Boom.
So I just have to
while she went through her stuff, also take care of my own shit. So it's super important just to yeah,